Welcome to another episode of the Save Yourself podcast. This one is going to be a really good one. So, over the years, I've decided that I want to specialize in a few things. And this episode is that thing. It is nutrition for your hormones. Nutrition for your hormones, because I believe that when you change your nutrition, you change your gut health, and then you change your hormones. And this is especially useful for those people in hormonal transitions like perimenopause. So I'm super excited to get into this. I want to thank you for listening, for following, subscribing to the podcast, for giving your reviews. I am very excited about all the things that we're going to be doing with the podcast this year because I'm bringing in amazing guests. I'm doing more solo episodes based on what you want to hear about. And, we're learning from what resonates. I understand that perimenopause, that hormones, that nutrition for hormones is something that is very interesting to a lot of people for good reason. We don't have a lot of reputable resources for this. And so this is an episode that you can reference back to, that you can listen to a couple of times, that you can send to a friend. I'm really going to get deep into some of the science. And so I think you'll find it more useful than, we can all do a Google search and chat GPT. But I think what we want to know is which things are actually going to make the biggest difference, which things based on the science would I recommend, which things I do that I've seen that really help people. That is what we are going to cover today. And the really cool thing is that with this comes a guide that I created at no cost to you. Why would I create a guide? I honestly think that instead of taking notes, because you're probably at the gym or you're going for a walk or you're in the car, so you probably don't want to take notes. And so this is kind of a high level outline of everything that we're going to be talking about today. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't gone to Amy MD Wellness and subscribed to the newsletter, please do that because you can always stay up to date on the new research that I'm really loving, the new products that I'm really loving, and also you can see the newest episode of the podcast if you've missed it. So that's at amymdwellness.com. All right, let's get into it. So hormones are something that are very dynamic in everybody's lives, women especially, because women have a change of hormones during pregnancy. Every month, they have a hormonal cycle. And then throughout the years, there's a hormonal transition that happens that starts about age 35 and really accelerates in the late 40s all the way into the mid 50s. And that is all perimenopause. So perimenopausal symptoms can start as early as 35, go all the way into your 50s. So this is a big time frame. And so I'm going to tell you some actionable steps that you can do to improve your hormones. So let's get to it. Number one is get 1 hour of nature time every single day. Now, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with my hormones? So we have studies that show that nature, so not even just sunlight, but being outside, can reduce your cortisol, can reduce your blood pressure, can change your cardiovascular fitness. Being in nature time is so much more than, just feeling good. It is literally changing your hormones as you speak. And I was talking to a circadian rhythm expert, and we talked about how humans, we need circadian rhythm input, day and light input every single day. And if you're not getting it through natural light, your body's processes, 80% of your body's processes that work on circadian rhythms will not work effectively. So what I mean is when you start getting 1 hour of nature time, you actually improve up to 80% of the things that are happening in your body. So it is incredible what an impact it can have. So obviously, the biggest studies are that it reduces cortisol levels, reduces blood pressure, and improves vitamin D levels, which of course are linked to well-being. And so what I would recommend is getting 1 hour a day. I know it's difficult because a lot of us work indoor jobs. The weather is not the best, but as we approach summer in most of the Northern Hemisphere, I recommend that you get outside and you get yourself, about 40 minutes 3 times a week. I would say 40 minutes 3 times a week of walking, but like 1 hour of actual nature time a day. So it might be a 40-minute walk plus 20 minutes broken up into 5-minute increments. So you're walking to your work, that's 5 minutes. You're walking back to your car, that's another 5 minutes. Maybe you spend 5 minutes in the morning, kind of resetting your system. I always spend a few minutes in the morning getting direct sunlight or at least daylight. And that counts as nature time. And so walk your dog, that's another few minutes. And so if you can add up to 1 hour a day, this is something that can really drastically change your hormones. Okay, let's move to number 2. Getting 7 to 12,000 steps every single day. So this kind of piggybacks on number 1. We definitely want to get nature time, but we also want to get a total number of steps. Walking is something that has the most medical evidence as an exercise that can change your brain, can improve your mood, can improve your cardiovascular health. Walking is something that a lot of people discount as not really exercise, but I believe it's the best exercise. Walking 7,000 to 12,000 steps a day is something that can not only improve the way your body metabolizes sugar, the way your body metabolizes cholesterol, the way your body regulates its blood pressure, the way your body regulates its gut-brain hormone. So the gut bacteria actually love it when you walk. Gut bacteria dance when you are moving, especially when you're walking. And when they dance, they're doing all these movements. They create this thing called short-chain fatty acids, which go all over your body and calm your inflammation. Anyone that tells you that walking is not good exercise is ill-informed about the benefits of walking. The science says walking is the number one thing that you can be doing for your health. So if you have wondered, how can I get the walk in if I work a sedentary job? So I have some ideas for you. If you have a phone call, which doesn't require you to be on camera, or even if it does, actually, if you're brave like me, I just do it on camera while I'm walking. But you can put in your headphones, you can go outside, and you can take that meeting on the phone while you're walking. If you have an option to meet with a friend for a drink or for a coffee, meet them for a walk instead. This is something that's going to improve your relationships with your friends and also your kids or your partner. I think it takes a little bit of an adjustment. There's a lot of people who might say to you, like, oh yeah, let's meet for a drink instead. Just say, hey, I actually would prefer if we do a walk and talk, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people will be like, okay. And I've almost exclusively changed to doing that as a way to connect with people. And it's been a game changer. It's also been a game changer for my relationship with my kids, because I think this is something teenagers don't like to sit and chat. They don't have a ton of time. And so when I force them, I call it forcing, coerce them into walking, we actually got some really quality time together. Age-related diseases can decrease by 50% when you walk 8 to 12,000 steps a day. I mean, this is incredible. This is something that we leave on the table. How many people do you know that are actually walking 8 to 12,000 steps a day? Unless they've either listened to this or they've heard another similar podcast or news report about this data. I mean, this is incredible. The other thing I want to emphasize about walking is that it can grow your brain. Walking is one of the best ways to grow the hippocampal region of your brain, a very vital region of your brain. As you age, your brain starts to shrink. And walking is one of the things that you can do to counteract that shrinkage so that you can actually grow certain parts of your brain when walking. So that study showed walking 40 minutes 3 times a week is what you need to actually grow your brain. Individuals that are actually meeting 150 minutes a week of exercise have a 31% decreased rate of mortality. So this is not just about looking good and, leaning out, which it totally does. It's not even about just improving mood. It's actually also about improving longevity. There's a brand new study that showed even 5 minutes of walking, especially after meals or any time of the day, has an impact on your metabolism in a positive way. So I had to really learn the hard way. I've been traveling a lot, and I used to go to the gym and go to a typical exercise class at least once a day, if not twice. Like I would do an exercise class and then maybe a walk or a yoga class. And I have really learned that doing exercise snacks are a great way to get exercise in a meaningful way, but in a very small little pieces. So, for example, I might just be able to go for a 10-minute walk in the morning, and then maybe it's 5 minutes here and there. But honestly, that can add up to a sizable amount and make an impact on your metabolism, says a new study. A new study says just 5 minutes of walking can have a sizable impact on your health. Okay, now let's move on to number 3. This is a hard one for most, and I'll admit it is a difficult one to talk about because everyone is hearing it ad nauseum. But listen, I have a few novel things to say about it. It is sleep. Sleeping 8 hours plus. So I will tell you that women that are in hormonal transitions, like perimenopause, like postpartum, like, during their periods, this is a time that you may require more sleep than is typical and more sleep than is recommended by the typical practitioner. So during times of stress, during times of hormonal transition, you may need between 8 and 9.5 or 10 hours of sleep, and not just 8. Your hormonal reserve needs more sleep. So if you are in a time of hormonal transition, if you're in a time of stress, if you're in a time of a lot of change, increase your sleep. Increase your sleep by 15 minutes a day until you're waking up without an alarm. And this, my friends, will change the way you function, how you feel, and will help your hormonal reserve. Studies show that those people who sleep less than 6 hours a day, 6 hours a night, are more likely to be obese and more likely to be overweight. And the people that sleep the most are the leanest. Not only that, it's not just about weight. So obviously a lot of us are, especially during perimenopause, are trying to keep up our lean body mass and really decrease our fat mass. And sleep may be the secret for a lot of women during that time. So this, of course, is not necessarily nutrition, but it's nutrition adjacent. You really want to increase your sleep so that you can see if you can improve your body fat mass and increase that lean muscle mass. We have also noticed in studies that people who sleep inadequately, 6 hours or less, are much more likely to get things like diabetes. Interestingly, even getting just a little bit less sleep, so if you're getting 6 to 7.5 hours, that has been shown to be a risk factor for increased coronary calcification, which then influences your heart health in the long term. Also, many studies have shown that the lack of sleep increases inflammatory factors in your body. So, when you hear about lowering inflammation, one of the best things you can do, besides changing your diet and decreasing alcohol and smoking, is increasing the amount of sleep. If you are someone who's really trying to improve your health and sleep has not been a priority, I implore you to try to sleep a little bit more, even if it's just 15 to 30 minutes a night. It is a game changer. All right, we're at number 4. Number 4 is weight training. Now, weight training can be considered resistance training or even body weight training at least 2 times a week. So women get their peak muscle mass and bone mass by the age of 30, and then they have a big decline during that perimenopause and menopausal transition. They're losing like 10% of their muscle mass and up to 20% of their bone mass during this transition. And so what you want to do, you want to start very early. So women, if you're listening to this, in your teens, in your 20s or 30s, you want to be doing more weight training and resistance training so that you have more reserve when it comes to menopause. And when you're losing all that muscle and bone, you have a lot to begin with. Women who chronically diet and they're on chronic, that over-exercise, that have chronic calorie deprivation, they will be losing their bone and muscle mass at early ages, and they will have to deal with that when they're older. And so I wanted to tell you this because I have a teenager, And, a lot of her friends and the society in general is always telling women to restrict their calories and is always telling women that they should be smaller and thinner. But if you think about it in the longevity of it all, when you reach 70, 80, 90, that bone reserve and that muscle reserve is the one that's going to keep you healthy. That's the one that's going to keep you from falling. That's the one that's going to keep you getting up off the toilet. That's the one that's going to keep you traveling. So you want to have a great base of muscle mass. So I want to tell the women that are under 30, this is your time to build that muscle mass, to build that bone mass. So you have a big reserve when you're older and you're not dealing with frailty and osteoporosis. And if you're like me, who's well past that under 30 zone, then it's even more important that you preserve what you have by counteracting that muscle loss, counteracting that bone loss. It's actually possible to have the most muscle you've ever had, even as a 50, 60, 70, or 80-year-old. There's a study that shows that 100-year-olds and 90-year-olds are able to build muscle just as well as 70-year-olds. So what that means is that at any age, you can build muscle at any age. And so don't be discouraged if you're like me, who was a chronic runner or a chronic cardio person. I really didn't eat enough protein. I really didn't take care of my bone health. I really did a lot of calorie restriction. And I got to a place where I'm now worried about what my bone health and muscle health is going to look like in my 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so I'm doing everything I can to counteract that now. That means at least 2 times a week resistance training that doesn't have to look the same for everybody. It doesn't have to be in the gym. It can be Pilates. It can be squats. It can be push-ups. It can be any kind of push or pull activities. Anything that's pulling on your muscles and pulling on your bones is a great option. Okay, let's move to number 5. This is a new addition for me in my life over the last 5 years, and it's mindfulness. This can be prayer. This can be meditation. This can be journaling. This can be a walk in nature where you just have no headphones and you're just connecting with God, universe, whatever you want to call it. I think that this is a game changer when it comes to hormones. Here's why. We now know that people who are part of churches or part of religion or participate in any kind of meditation are better able to regulate their cortisol levels. And cortisol, as you know, is a hormone, stress hormone, that impacts more than just the feeling of stress. It actually impacts your brain function. It can shrink your brain. It can impact your other hormones. So for women, we all know a case where either for ourselves or a woman we know, their cortisol was so high that it makes you skip your period. And this is a sign that your cortisol is so high that is impacting your hypothalamus in your brain, and your brain is shutting off the production of your sex hormones because of the high levels of stress. So a woman's body is always trying to protect a potential fetus. And so if it thinks that you are way too stressed to carry a baby, then it will shut off those hormones. Now, I'll give you an example of why that would be. Like, why would nature do that? Nature does not want, your body's designed so that it cannot carry a pregnancy during times of extreme stress like war or famine. So it makes sense that when you're facing extreme stress, your body will shut off estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and all the other hormones so that you don't inadvertently get pregnant and carry a fetus in a time that would be dangerous for your child. So evolutionarily, that's probably the explanation why. But what happens to us in this day and age is that a lot of us are dealing with excessive stress. We don't have coping mechanisms. We don't have a toolkit. And we end up really getting to a place where our body is dealing with high levels of cortisol and no way to kind of get rid of it. And so it's telling our brain, it's telling the rest of our hormones that it should shut down. And so a lot of people will say, once they start a mindfulness practice, once they start a meditation practice, once they start religion, or even something like I'm doing, like, connect with the universe, just go for a walk, or connect with God or the universe. This is a way to bring down those stress hormones and make the rest of your hormones work better. So that's the meditation piece. Number 6, surround yourself with positive people. So this one, I just love this because you are the sum of the people you spend the most time with. Your gut bacteria literally jump from your body to other people's bodies and vice versa. And so if you want to be like someone else, come into proximity with them as much as you can. If you admire someone's, athletic prowess, if you admire someone's intelligence, if you admire someone's kindness, if you admire someone's motivation, if you admire someone's child rearing skills, all of those things are related to their gut bacteria. So what I mean is, if you change your gut bacteria, you can actually change the way you think, the way you feel, the way you look, the way you act, how motivated you are. And this is backed by science. Yes, you can transplant gut bacteria from one person to another and change their personality entirely, change their mood, change their mental health issues. You can change their entire kind of being. One of the stories, the studies I like to share a lot, and you probably have heard this if you've heard me speak anywhere or you've listened to any of my content, but if you take the gut bacteria from patients who have schizophrenia and you transplant it into animals that don't have a gut microbiome of their own, you will shockingly change the whole personality of the animal. So they took gut bacteria from patients who had schizophrenia. They took gut bacteria from patients who did not have schizophrenia. And they transplanted it into mice. And they mixed up the mice. And so the researchers didn't know which mice got which gut bacteria. But when the researchers observed the mice, the researchers were able to tell by almost 100% accuracy which animals had gotten the gut bacteria from the patients with schizophrenia. It is that profound. It changed so much of their personalities, of their behavior. The rats were displaying behavior similar to schizophrenia, at least the mouse version of that. And when they looked at their brains, they saw that there were changes in the brains that were consistent with schizophrenia. So glutamate issues in the brain just from transplanting the gut. So you can imagine that by changing your gut, you have a way to actually change your entire brain. One of the ways you can change your gut, besides getting a microbiome transplant, aka fecal transplant, is to change your nutrition. Changing your nutrition entirely, or like a drastic change in your nutrition, in studies has been shown to change your microbiome. So when you change your nutrition, you change the gut bacteria that live in your gut. And when you change the gut bacteria that live in your gut, different signals are sent to your brain and different outcomes happen. So my message to you is to surround yourself with people who you want to be like, because your gut microbiome is shared with the people you spend the most time with. This is something I can't emphasize enough. If you want to change your gut microbiome, change the people you're around and change your nutrition. That's something that we'll get to next. Okay, number 7, we're going to start talking about the 30-33. The first 30 of the 30-33 is protein. 30 grams of protein in your first meal. This, I cannot tell you, is a game changer. I cannot tell you how many people come to me and say, when I started to do that first 30 grams of protein in my first meal, it changed the way I crave things. It changed my mood. It changed my blood sugar balance. It changed the rest of the choices for the rest of the day. I believe that if you eat 30 grams of protein in your first meal, it will improve your life in ways you might not even understand yet. And especially if you're someone who's trying to deal with hormones, maybe you're postpartum, maybe you're perimenopause. Especially for you perimenopause ladies, this is a double benefit, because not only are you getting blood sugar control, craving control, metabolism boost, you're also helping your body build more muscle when it's paired with resistance training. So getting 30 grams of protein in that first meal is so important. An example would be an egg scramble with some cottage cheese on the side. That is one of my favorite ways to get the 30 grams of protein in the morning. You can also do a shake. You can also do a yogurt parfait. You can also do probiotic cottage cheese. You can also do a protein bar, like 30 grams of protein in your first meal, whenever that first meal is. So for me, my first meal is between 10 and 12 on most days. Sometimes it's a little later and sometimes it's a little earlier, depending on what time I woke up and what I did that morning. So I often wake up fasted. I do a workout, and then I drink my IM8, which is like a nutrition supplement drink. And then I'll have with it my 30 grams of protein, usually an egg scramble with veggies and some cottage cheese on the side. And I'll often have a tea with that. And that's kind of my breakfast and my go-to 30 grams of protein meal. But there's so many different versions of that you can do. You can do a tofu scramble. You can do a quinoa bowl. I mean, there's countless ways that you can get 30 grams of protein, no matter what your preference is and your dietary choices. So that's my protein recommendation. Number 8, you're going to try to get 30 grams of protein. Number 8, you're going to try to get 30 grams of fiber throughout the day. 30 grams of fiber throughout the day is something that less than 5% of Americans on average get. So this is not easy. That's why I started with the 30 grams of protein as my first recommendation. And then you layer on the second 30, which is 30 grams of fiber throughout the day. And I mentioned the stat about 5% of Americans getting that fiber level because it's really hard. And I want to emphasize that it's really hard. But if you are in a hormone transition like perimenopause, the best thing you can do for yourself and your hormones is increase the amount of fiber in every meal. This means fruits and nuts at breakfast. This means leafy greens and avocado at lunch. This means vegetables and a salad at dinner. Fiber is not easy to get if you're having an ultra processed diet. I always like to talk about how your Starbucks Frappuccino and your coffee and tea that you're drinking all day does not have fiber. There is so many ways to get fiber, but it has to be real food. Basically, one of the biggest disadvantages of ultra processed food or fast foods or desserts is that it typically has very little fiber. And when you want to improve your health and your hormone health, you must focus on fiber. Fiber has not had its moment yet. It needs to have a moment. It is not just, some people ask me, what's the best fiber supplement? I mean, you can take psyllium husk, you can take inulin, but I honestly believe that the fiber that you get through foods is the most important. So blueberries, avocado, seeds, nuts, leafy greens, any kind of vegetable. I mean, you are getting so much fiber. One of the fun things I like to talk about is kiwi fruit with the skin. Kiwi fruit with the skin has 3 times the fiber of a peeled kiwi. So there's some easy things that you can do to increase your fiber. Even things like letting your bread sit in the freezer before you eat it. It sounds so crazy, but carbs, simple carbs that are refrigerated or frozen at least overnight, change some of their starch into resistant starch, which works like fiber in our body. And so that's an easy way. If you are craving that pasta or craving that rice, you can keep it in the refrigerator overnight. You can have it the next day, and it's a great way to get some fiber. So this is something I talk on social media about, but if you're interested in making your bread, your pasta, your rice, or any other simple carb healthier and better for you and more resistant starch, which means more fiber for your body, keep it in the refrigerator or freezer overnight. Cooled carbs have an effect on your gut that is beneficial. They feed the good gut bacteria through resistant starch, and that works like fiber in your body. So if you're someone who's trying to get more fiber, one of the things you can do is eat cooled carbs. Of course, once they're cooled, you can warm them up as you need, but it's a strategy that you can take to actually increase the amount of fiber you have. But the real strategy on top of, there's only so much that bread and pasta and rice can give you in terms of fiber. The real fiber powerhouses is in your fruits and your vegetables, in your seeds, in your nuts, and even in your whole grains. Number 9 is to add 3 servings of probiotic foods to your diet. Fermented foods make all the difference in your health. One of the biggest things I hear from people is that they started to add fermented foods to their health, to their diet, and they noticed an improvement in all of their symptoms, including gut, brain, mood, energy, etc. So a lot of people ask me, well, why not just take a probiotic? There's nothing wrong in taking a probiotic. However, I believe that you can get the best probiotic effect from fermented foods. So the kimchi, the sauerkraut, the raw apple cider vinegar, the probiotic cottage cheese, the yogurt, these things provide your body with live bacteria that is easily obtained and easily added to your gut. When you take a probiotic pill, the body has to differentiate between something that is friendly bacteria versus bad bacteria. And so your gut will often try to kill the probiotic before it gets to where it needs to go, which is the lower colon. This has been the biggest problem with taking probiotics, is that a lot of the probiotic is destroyed before it even gets into your colon where it needs to go. So there are companies that have tried to think of ways to get around that. But one of the best ways to get around that is to eat your food in a probiotic form. So meaning our body is very savvy. They know that foods that contain probiotics, so sauerkraut, kimchi, natto, kefir, they know to let those bacteria through to the gut. The body is able to let it go through without destroying it. And so that's why you'll get a lot of benefit from eating fermented foods. I would recommend to anyone and everyone listening to this who wants to improve their hormone health, wants to improve their gut health, to add at least 1 to 3 servings of probiotic foods every day. That's not a lot. That's like 1 tablespoon of kimchi or sauerkraut. I know it's weird, and I know not a lot of people have fermented foods in, a typical American households, but it's something that's a game changer. It's something that I've seen over the years really change people's lives, and the research is so strong. I mean, there is no reason that you shouldn't be having fermented foods in your diet. I know it's not something that's super delicious for a lot of us. It's an acquired taste, but believe me, after a while, you'll start to love it. There was a recent study that showed that when you take a person with a traditional African diet from rural Africa and you make them eat American diet for 2 weeks, you rapidly degrade the quality of their gut microbiome. I mean, it took just 2 weeks to see that. And vice versa, if you take an American who's eating a typical American diet and put them on this rural African diet, they were able to improve the quality and the types and the amount of gut bacteria. They were improved. So when you improve your gut bacteria, you improve your hormones, you improve your brain health. One of the best interventions you can do for your life and your hormones is to improve your gut health. And eating fermented foods is one of the best ways to support your hormones. Okay, we're on to the last tip, the last thing I would give you as counsel for nutrition for your hormones. Number 10 is to cut down alcohol or remove it entirely. Now, this is what I mean by that. The new studies are really, really telling. Alcohol not only shows shrinkage of your brain. So even 1 drink every night on a chronic basis has been shown to shrink the brain and age it. It's also been shown to increase your risk of multiple cancers. Alcohol has also been shown to kill gut bacteria and to increase cortisol levels. And so if you're on a journey of healing your hormones, if you're on a journey of perimenopause, if you're on a journey of postpartum, if you're on a journey of just hormone imbalance, getting your alcohol use really to a much, much smaller level, to like 2 to 3 drinks a week, is highly recommended. So yes, I'm talking to you, even those people who are drinking just one drink at night. That is too much when it comes to brain health, when it comes to hormone health, and when it comes to your cardiovascular health, and when it comes to cancer risk. If you enjoy alcohol, if it's a huge part of your life, cut it down to 2 to 3 drinks a week. That is my recommendation to you, to have the best hormones, to have the best sleep, to have the best brain health, the best inflammatory levels. This is what you can do and should do, even if it's for a month. And you, instead of dry January, you do like a dry June or dry May. This is something that can drastically improve your health. So, friends, that is the 10 things that I would do to improve your hormone health. Like, the funny story for me, maybe not so funny, kind of sad, but I struggled with my hormones for so many years because as a young physician with little kids, I was just a hot mess. I was stressed all the time. My mind was racing all the time. I didn't allow enough sleep. I literally was doing everything wrong on this list. Everything on this list, I was doing wrong. And I was noticing the effects. And nobody, no doctor, no blood test, nobody could tell me what was going on. And I'm telling you this because if this is you, if this sounds like you, this is worth a shot. Try all 10 of these things and then let me know how you feel. I am hoping that you are like me and this helps you kind of open up your mind, open up your gut. This helps you find the gifts that you never knew you had. It gives you, when you do these 10 things, you will get clarity about things that you never even thought you needed clarity on. You will get direction on your life. You will know what you're supposed to be doing. I had no idea that the benefits of doing these things were well beyond how I looked and felt or the size of clothes I had. This has implications well beyond that. So I hope that you'll try this and find your own gifts. And thank you for joining for this episode of the Save Yourself podcast.